We've already looked at caching as a form of optimization to reduce load and potentially speed up page processing. The caching can take place on the browser or on the web server or on a proxy server. There's two other optimization features in the MVC framework, bundling and minification. So bundling makes it easy to combine or bundle up multiple files into a single file. Now, web browsers typically try to speed up the load time of web pages by, after they grab the initial web page with all the HTML markup in it, then they start to download the resources, the images, the CSS files, and everything it needs in order to display the page, and it's downloading all these resources in parallel. However, it limits the number of concurrent downloads, typically in most browsers, to so that it doesn't sap all of the user's computing resources. So most browsers limit the number of items that it will concurrently download to about 6 per domain. Now, bundling resources reduces the number of CSS and JavaScript files by bundling multiple files into a single file. So fewer files means fewer HTTP requests from the browser back to the server, and that should improve the first page load performance. Now, if you've never built a large application, you might wonder, why would you ever need a bundle in the first place? And the answer is that many larger applications split JavaScript and CSS into multiple files for a number of different reasons: to ease management, to keep the styles for certain pages in one file, other pages in other files, or for allowing multiple developers to work concurrently on the same code base. Or there might be styles that are based on other styles for various purposes. So you'll often find multiple CSS files for a given project. Also, you might be utilizing multiple code libraries from different sources, maybe even your own code libraries that you've created for your own internal use in your app, in your company. So you might have a jQuery file, you might have your own custom code, you might have 3 jQuery plugins, and so now we're already up to 5 different JS files, 5 different requests from the web client back to the web server. Now, I want to emphasize that we're talking about improving the performance of the first page load. Typically, a web browser will cache entire pages or just parts of the page like images, JavaScript, CSS files, depending on information that it gets from the HTTP response header, like we learned about in the caching video near the end. So even if you didn't use this bundling feature, chances are that the web browser will cache JavaScript and CSS for the second and subsequent requests. So the second time that the user accesses the web page, it'll be noticeably quicker because a lot of the information has already been cached from the previous page request, unless something's changed. Now, most web browsers have a debugging console for developers that allow you to see JavaScript errors, HTML validation errors, and so on. And most of them also have a network tool that allows you to view the metrics on how long it takes to download files from a server, all the different files that are utilized for that particular web page. And in Internet Explorer, this console that's available is called the F12 Developer Tools, and we'll take a look at that in just a moment. We'll see it in action. Now, we just talked about bundling and the benefit of bundling multiple files into fewer files, 1 file, 2 files, whatever the case might be, in order to reduce requests. But the other optimization that you can perform is called minification. And so minification takes your JavaScript and your CSS. It removes all the extraneous characters, like line feed characters. It will replace certain identifiers like variable names with short 1 or 2 character long names. It'll remove the comments. So anything it can do in an effort to make the actual size of the file smaller, it'll do that to minify that particular file. So what you can do is whenever you're developing your JavaScript and your CSS, you can go ahead and add lines, add comments, make the file, use very long descriptors, make it very descriptive of what you're trying to accomplish, and then during the minification, the compiler will make the file as small as possible and add a .min suffix after the name of the file. So if you had like javascript1.js or stylesheet1.css, then it would create new files like javascript1.min.js and stylesheet1.min.css. And you can see this already at work if you take a look in your scripts folder. You'll see that you already have this at work in jQuery. So as you can see, there are 4 different versions of jQuery sitting in your scripts folder by default. There is the original one that I have selected right here. This is the original version. You can actually scroll through it. You can actually read it. It has comments, very descriptive, which is great. And then if you take a look at the next one below it, it's the minified version of it. And you'll say, well, it's only like 3 lines of code long plus this big header at the beginning. Yeah, take a look as we scroll to the right. There's no line feeds, and everything is real small. Like here's a variable name, and here's a variable name, and here's an identifier, and here's a variable name. Okay, so they took out all the long names and replaced them with short names, took out all the comments, took out all of the line feeds, and so on, in order to make the file as small as possible. Now, I didn't bother to take a look at what the size difference is, but every little byte helps when you're trying to download data from a server to a client. There's also two more files that I want to talk about. The first one is the IntelliSense file. So it's jQuery version number and then .intellisense.js. And so some popular JavaScript libraries have an IntelliSense file. And so as the name suggests, it actually provides the information that Visual Studio will need to provide IntelliSense support whenever you're working with that particular JavaScript library, specifically, in this case, the jQuery library. And just so you know, unfortunately, most JavaScript libraries right now do not have IntelliSense support. And sometimes there is IntelliSense support, but it's from some dude, who just work on it part-time. And so you can grab it from GitHub, and you hope that it works. But hopefully the support will grow for this feature over time, and hopefully Microsoft will participate in bringing more IntelliSense files to more popular JavaScript libraries. The last file that we're going to take a look at here is the min.map file. So these are source map files, and the source map file holds information about the original JavaScript file before it was minified, so that whenever you're debugging your app in the F12 tools or wherever the debugger is, it will help you find the correct line in the column number for the original file, because as you know, the minified version of the file that might be downloaded to the browser might be very cryptic and difficult to even understand what's going on here. So this mapping file will help you help the debugger tell you the actual line of code that where the error is in the original non-minified version. Okay, so you should never touch this file because it's automatically generated, as is the minified version of the file as well. You don't want to mess with those, don't want to touch anything about them. If you want to make any changes to any JavaScript file, you always make it to the non-minified version. Okay. So the real question is then, well, how do I add bundling and how do I add minification to my application? And so that's what I want to demonstrate for the rest of this lesson. There's a couple of steps. Now, if you, depending on the template, when you go File, New Project, and you get into the one ASP or project dialog, most of these the templates will have a starter kit for you, essentially, especially this MVC template. But the empty template doesn't have much for you to begin with. So that's where I'm starting from. I'm going to cancel out of this. I guess I need to open it back up now. And so we're going to add it all into the empty template, and I think it'll be good for you to see how it's added in instead of just taking it for granted that it's in a template. This way you can see all of the steps and all of the pieces of the puzzle that have to work. So if you ever run into any problems, you'll know where to look, or at least you'll have some idea of the scope of the issue. Okay, so to begin with, you can see that in my scripts folder, I have added a number, actually 10 different JavaScript files from javascript1.js all the way through javascript 10.js. And you'll notice they all have a very similar style here. Got some comments, I got a very simple looking for an ID called button 10, and we're going to handle the click event, and we're going to compose a message, and we're going to then use an alert to display that message to the end user. And every one of these is exactly the same. The only thing that changes is the number, button 5 in this case for javascript 5.js. All right, so that's the first thing. And then I also have in the content folder similar idea for style sheets here, style sheet 1, style sheet 2, style sheet 3. They each have different colors for the different button IDs. And then if you take a look, and just to kind of finish this out, if you look in the index folder, I've just created 10 HTML5 buttons of type, so input of type button with an ID 1 through 10. And then I've also changed the text so that when you actually run the application, I guess there is one other critical piece of information here that you'll need to see. First of all, you can see that I've styled up with the different colors, and then also if I click button 2, I get the alert box popping up, and we'll do the same thing with button number 7. Okay, so you get the idea how this works. Now, how did I include the CSS files and the JavaScript files into my web page? In the layout page, you can see here at the top in the head section, I just added them in by bulk. Okay, so I've got 10 different references to CSS pages, and then near the bottom, right before the closing body tag, I've added 10 references to the JavaScript files. And the problem here again is if we run the application and we go to the F12 tools, and so you can literally get to the F12 tools by hitting F12 on your keyboard, all right, and it pops it up, and sometimes this is up a little too high, but you can see there's 2 windows. You can even pop it out into a separate window if you want to, but we'll leave it right here. And what we're going to do is actually clear the session out, and we'll stop it and start it up again, and then I'm going to refresh the browser, and I want you to notice something as we scroll through here. Notice all of the references. Here, let me move this over to the side. Oh, that's too bad. Pull this out. Maybe you can see here. All right, so there's a couple of things to notice about this. First of all, you can see each file starts out at the very top with the actual request itself, and then it starts grabbing the resources like site CSS, boot min CSS, and then it grabs all of our style sheets 1 through 10. And then it begins in with the JavaScript references, and then it goes from JavaScript 1.js all the way through JavaScript 10.js. Now over here on the right hand side, you can kind of see a meter on how long it takes to download all of these. Now the effect is muted a little bit because we're downloading from a local source, but if we were to upload this to a web server, especially a slow web server, there would be a more dramatic effect, and it might take as much as a second or 2 seconds in some cases, or especially if the files were even larger, it might take more time to download those files, and so this would be a more dramatic effect. But you'll just have to use your imagination since I'm running this all locally. But feel free to upload this to an account that you've got just to kind of test this out and see how it works. All right, so now what we want to do though is, we're making 20 requests back to get the 10 CSS and the 10 CSS files and the 10 JavaScript files. We can reduce that down dramatically through bundling. And so to turn that on, there's actually several steps, again, automated for you whenever you use certain templates. But we're going to start in the web.config, and you're going to take a look at this compilation. By default, debug is equal to true, but we're going to set that equal to false. All right, so we will not be in debug mode, which means that when you do deliver up pages, don't deliver the full versions, deliver up the minified versions, okay? Now the next thing that we're going to need to do is go and get a NuGet package. So we get the references that we need for the minification of bundling, and it's in a package called Microsoft.asp.net.web.optimization. The way you get to that is go to NuGet. So let's manage NuGet packages, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste in the entire namespace, Microsoft.asp.net ASP.NET.web.optimization and do a search. And you might need to click around a little bit, and NuGet kind of gets wanky sometimes. All right, there we go. Now make sure you get the latest one. For version 2013, the latest one was 1.1.3, released in February of 2014. Make sure it's created by Microsoft. So there are older versions and there are some things that are not by Microsoft. Just be aware of that. So I'm going to go ahead and click install. And you're going to be installing a couple of different things as well. You can see those references. I'll go ahead and say yes because things have changed outside. The web config changed as a result of the NuGet modification. All right, so that's the next step. The next thing that we need to do is to go to this app start folder here at the very top, and we're going to add a new class to that folder. And you can see that we currently have a route config. Now we need something called a bundle config. So let's go bundle config.cs. And inside of here, we need to add a method called public static void register bundles, and then what will be passed into register bundles is a bundle collection, and we'll just call it bundles. Now you'll notice that I'm not getting a lot of IntelliSense here. It's because I need to add some namespaces from that NuGet package that we just added. So you want to add the using command for system.web.optimization, and you get that. And then we'll start and we'll add bundles here in just a moment. We'll come back to that. Now, the next thing that we need to do is go to the global.asax file, and just like you had to call route config.register routes, we're going to call bundle config dot register bundles, and then we want the bundle table. Just like there's a route table, there's a bundle table dot bundles. All right. You can see we're missing some things, some references here. First of all, let's get bundle tables. I'm going to hit Control period on my keyboard, and I'm going to add the using statement for system.web.optimization. And then bundle config is a class we just added, and it's in that app start folder. And I think really the issue here is that we may not want to put it in that namespace, app start. Let's see what they have for route config. Yeah, route config is not in an app start. Is not in an app start namespace. So I'm just going to delete the last part of that namespace off, and then when I build this, it should work. Yeah, so it found it. All right, so there we go. We got that. And then one last thing that we need to do in order to access some helper methods that will actually insert the bundles into the right spots, we're going to have a reference to that system.web.optimization inside of our web pages. And to do that, what we got to do is open up both of the web config files, the one at the root level and then the one inside the views shared, or the views folder. Right, yeah, the views folder. So let's start with the one in the web config. It needs to go inside of the app settings. There should be actually it's system.web, sorry. It should go in system.web. There we go, pages, namespaces, and then we can add a new namespace equal to system.web.optimization. Okay, hopefully I spelled that right. Now we need to do the same thing inside of this web config inside the views folder. So you can see that it already has a pages and namespaces, and we just need to go below it here and just add namespace equals system.web.optimization, like that. Great. All right, so we have just about everything we need set up here in order to start adding bundles. So let's go ahead and get to the bundle config and start adding some bundles. And I'm just going to copy and paste the first script bundle here so you can see kind of how it works. This is a jQuery one, and the only thing that I wanted to point out to you is that we're adding a new bundle, a new instance of script bundle. We're giving that script bundle a name or a path that will reference whenever we want to insert it into our application. And then we're calling the include, and this is the actual physical directories or the files where that we're going to add to this bundle. Now in this case we're only adding one bundle, one item to the bundle, this jQuery. And notice that it has this little variable here that will use whatever the latest version of jQuery is. So in this case, it would dynamically insert the version that we have installed, 1.10.2. All right. So we've got a jQuery bundle, and we could add additional items to this bundle if we wanted to, jQuery plugins or additional code, even if it wasn't directly related to jQuery. It'll load things in the order that you specify them. However, probably the more useful bundle that we'll create is the one that will reference all of the 10 JavaScript files that we created. So it's almost identical. I'm just calling it something different, /bundle/custom scripts. And here I'm including all 10 files. So the include method here, as we're adding a new script bundle, you can give it a comma delimited list of files that you want added. In this case, I just added 1 through 10, like so. All right, so that creates the bundle. Now we want to actually insert that bundle into our page. And I'm going to go to the layout, back to the layout page, and go all the way to the bottom, like so. And what I'll do is add a reference to scripts.render, and then I want to be careful and use the exact same name, or rather path, that I created here. I want to copy it and paste it in here. I misspelled this once and I didn't get anything, and I was scratching my head for about a half hour. Okay, so just make sure you might want to copy and paste. You're going to get the debugging not enabled. That's true. That's correct, because we disabled it in the web config. That's fine. Run without debugging. You'll be just fine. This will give us the minification aspect of it. Let's make sure that we got our scripts. Okay, so everything's still working. Now let's see kind of the behind the scenes. I'm going to hit F12 on the keyboard, and I'm going to go over to the network tab. I'm going to stop, clear everything out, start it up again, and then hit the refresh button. And I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom. Notice that our JavaScript 1 through 10 files are gone. Instead, we get this custom scripts with a question mark. So we have a query string v, I guess, for version equals, and then some long GUID after that. And so if you right-click this and select Copy Response Payload, you can actually see here. Let's pop this in the Notepad. Paste there. Okay, so this is what you get. Notice that this is the minified version. It stripped out all of the comments. It stripped out some of the notice that it basically combined a bunch of things. Like I had a variable and I was just concatenating two strings, and then it just put it all into one string. So it's smart enough to figure that out. That's really cool. Okay, so that's how we were able to do it, to add both bundling and minification for a list of files that we created here in our bundle config. Let's do the same thing for CSS. Notice that we created a script bundle here. What are we going to create when we're working with styles? Well, we're going to create a style bundle. Almost identical, but just named a little bit differently. And so we're going to go new style bundle, and we're going to use the same sort of path to in order to reference it. We want to go content, and then we're going to call this, or I'm sorry, we're going to name this bundles / custom styles. All right, and then here in the include, we want to add all of the custom styles. Now, instead of, in this case, adding every one line by line, what I can just do is go and say, hey, in the content folder, there's a bunch of style sheets that all start with the name style or style sheet. Just go ahead and grab all of them. So I'm using an asterisk as a wildcard character there. And that should do it. Now I'm going to copy this because I'm going to need this here in just a moment. Custom styles. I'm going to go back into the layout and I'm going to comment out all of the references to the style sheets. So we'll get those out of the mix. And then what I want to do is go at styles. We did at scripts before. This time we're doing at styles.render. And then I want to paste in that path, that name for that bundle that we created. And I think that's all I need to do there. Okay, so you can also do this sort of thing for entire folders if you don't want to use a wildcard. You should beware of doing this. However, it is suggested that you go ahead and you spell everyone out. Especially if there are dependencies between your files, because if you take this approach or you just add an entire folder at a time, it will just add them in alphabetical order, and that may not be the order that you want them in, right? So you might want to be explicit about when they load, because they'll load in that specific order. Okay, so I think we are good to go here, right? We got everything. So let's see this at work. I'm going to go ahead and run without debugging again. And everything looks right. Let's take a look at the source. So let's hit F12 and take a look at the DOM Explorer. And you can see all the references. Whoops. Where are we here? Let's go up to the head section, and there you go. So all the links to the style sheets are gone, but in place of it is a link to this href bundle / custom styles != equals, and then or v equals, and then the version in a GUID, sort of. I guess it's a GUID anyway. And so if anything changes, this GUID will change to represent a new bundle that was recompiled. And we can obviously see this at play with the network as well. Just to now show you that we have far fewer references back to the server to grab files. So let's go ahead and refresh. And just like we saw the custom scripts below it, now we see custom styles. We can right click and say, hey, let's grab the response payload and let me paste it in a notepad, and you can see the minified version there. Okay? And it's interesting. Sometimes if the name of the color is short enough, it'll just use the name of the color. But if it's a longer name, it will replace it with the hex value for that color. That's pretty cool. All right, so there's also the option of using a CDN. Take a look at this URL on screen right now, bitdo/bundling. And let me get there and go back to camera. Okay. And so there's a lot of similar information to what I've already covered here. If you scroll all the way down, it talks about a couple of things that are important, like using a CDN, and I often prefer to use a CDN. Again, if your web page can only download concurrently 6 items from a single domain, then having a CDN, you can have up to 6 items on one domain and 6 items off your CDN, so you can be concurrently downloading a bunch of things at the same time. And it shows you how you can include a CDN. You just add a property of bundles, say .uCDN = true. You create a CDN path variable in this case, and then you pass it in as part of the script bundle. And what they also say is that you should, even if you use a CDN, you should add this little script right here on this page to do a fallback mechanism. So if for some reason the CDN version of jQuery can't be downloaded, that it will go back to your website domain and grab the local version of jQuery from there. So it's just a safety mechanism. The last thing that I wanted to kind of mention here is some of the best practices that it lists right here at the very bottom, bundling considerations. And one of the things that it says is that bundles should be partitioned by pages that need them. And it gives you an example here of the default ASP.NET MVC template for an internet application creates a jQuery validation bundle separate from jQuery, and the reason it does that is because the default view that just like lists items, it doesn't really need validation. It doesn't have any form controls on that page, so it doesn't need the validation. It just needs maybe the base jQuery package. So they don't include the validation bundle on that particular page. What you saw me do in this video was that I put everything here in the layout, but ideally what you would do is just, like we learned about before, create a script section and then add the section and a reference to whatever bundle it is that particular view needs in order for it to work correctly. Okay, so again, by me going straight to the layout, I made it easy on myself, but ideally you take a little bit more time and only load and partition your bundles for the pages that actually need that bundle of either styles or scripts. Okay, so very cool functionality. Again, helps optimize that first page load for your end users. All right, so we'll continue on the next video. Thanks.